Paula White, good to have you.
It's great to be with you.
So you've got a new book called Something Greater.
Yeah.
And it's not just a new book. It's you. It's your life.
It's 53 years in there. You know, it took me 9 years. Everybody kept, when I say everybody, a lot of the publishers said, Paula, get the story. I've written many books, mostly topics, etc., which I love to do. Get in the Bible, write about, deal with it, take 10 women from the Bible, tell them the lessons. This was the most difficult thing I've ever had to do, and also the most rewarding thing.
Really?
And it was. It's hard for me to, just even talk about myself. But I recognize it's really not my story. It's God's story through my life. And what I realize, it's my story and all of our stories. And somewhere in life, there are all these moments. Life's not this pretty little line and you take Susie or Jack or Johnny or whoever, our lives intersect. And if I can help mentor or show them a pathway, or God can use me in any way to help bring healing or hope or inspiration or help people find their purpose. And I think that's such an overused word, but purpose really is your supreme reason for being, which means that a sovereign God knew everything before. And I'm very open, very vulnerable, very real, very raw. I disrobe in front of everyone. That wasn't easy. You have to really become one with those moments again. Mm-hmm. And I can almost go like this for my child, let's say pre-18. I get saved when I'm 18. A lot of people know the story of young Paula, the former messed up Mississippi girl that I came from a pretty well-to-do family, but my father commits suicide. And when I'm 5 years old, sexually and physically abused from 6 to 13 at different times. I have this really amazing divine encounter. I'm chasing a guy. My story always has a guy in it somehow, but I'm chasing this guy. Happens to be a musician, and go over to his uncle's house. Well, it's actually his grandmother's house, and his uncle looks me in my eyes and says, I have the answers to your questions and the solution to your pain and problems. Of course, I'm very defensive, typical overachiever. What problems? I don't want to, I thought I lied to myself thinking I was masking it pretty well. Overachiever, making straight A's, AP courses. I'm competing up to Junior Olympics in gymnastics, dive team, swim team, you name it, cheerleading. Just anything and everything to, do you love me? Do you accept me? Am I okay? Get saved. And I say that so lightly because that day was such a radical, life-transforming day. First, I'm defensive, but he just continues and presses in, and he opens this book, this Bible, and it begins to tell me the plan of God, but the plan of God specifically for my life. And as he reads it, the more it's like I feel that hard shell begin to crack and begin to melt. And just the concept of a father that loved me unconditionally, that alone was appealing.
It had to be difficult to believe almost.
It was very, I actually write in there that it's could this possibly be true? It's almost like a fairy tale. It's magical. It's all those words. But it was true, and it was true because when I walked outside, I couldn't articulate it at 18 years old, and probably for many years, but I said, it was like my life was black and white. And it became technicolor, but what happened was I felt real love for the first time. Yeah. Couldn't explain it, didn't understand it, didn't know it, went back to living with my boyfriend because I didn't have any concept of sin. I wasn't raised, and I was raised, hey, be morally responsible. If you're going to have a drink, just don't drive. If you're going to have sex, have safe sex.
Right.
Make sure you're in love. Really? I'm 16 years old. You know, I mean, it's like, it's mind-boggling now. So I look actually at my boyfriend. Think about this. No concept. I've never heard the word. I mean, I think he told me, you know, all sinners this, and you've sinned against God. And I'm like, I've what? You know, like, and it's foreign. So you think about never being in church, never being raised. So I go back about 2 weeks into just doing my normal 18-year-old routine, going to college, living with my boyfriend and stuff. I look at him one day and I'm like, I can't do this. And he's like, do what? No, there has, at that point, been absolutely no concept of like sin, that this is a wrong. That, in fact, I think I'm being pretty responsible. You know, we're sharing rent together. I mean, I think I'm being this responsible 18-year-old. And I don't recognize at that time that the Holy Spirit is bringing conviction in my life.
Right.
But I look at him and I'm like, I can't do this. And he's like, do what? And I said, I don't know this, because I don't even understand what this is.
Right.
And he's like, Paula, what's wrong with you? Why are you crazy now? And I said, I don't know. And I pack up my bag and I go rent a little room. And I said it like this for so many years. I said, I felt like there was something greater.
Yeah.
And every moment in my life, and there's some very deep, dark moments that I talk about, not just when I'm not saved. I wish I could say that all my drama and trauma, and there were some very traumatic moments in my life, happened when I was a child, and everything was fine after I get saved, but it doesn't happen that way.
No, and that's what I want to ask you about, because you know you find yourself a part of a very successful church, very visible.
Yeah.
A lot of people know who you are. Financially, the church is just blowing it out of the water.
Yep.
But that wasn't a good place.
Is probably the worst time in my life. Worst time.
How does that happen?
The enemy's really good at what he does, meaning Satan. There were a lot of vulnerabilities in my life, a lot more healing that needed to happen. I can look back now, I think that's why it took me so long to write it, and see cracks in the road, and I can see things that I probably did see at the time, meaning in the beginning, getting into marriage that was already flawed and that had those cracks there, but wanting something so bad, like that I wanted to create a family so bad, and lying to myself, you know, thinking I could fix it, thinking everything would be okay, I could pray it away, I could withstand it, and it wasn't just one thing. There were, I one time counted it up, 19 life crisis, 39 different events.
Jeez. And
most people focused on the marriage. I went through a divorce that at the time the Lord spoke to me and said, don't say anything. And that in itself, you know, I'd never walked this. And it wasn't only the marriage. I believed so much in the sacredness of marriage that I really had been willing to stay in what had become a very abusive situation. And I talk very openly about this.
You do.
And the pain. I went through a deep, dark depression. Found out my son had been abused. I found out that he was an addict. My stepdaughter, I raised my ex-husband's 3 children. She was diagnosed with cancer and died 3 years later.
At any point, do you want to just go, okay, God, you've abandoned me, or this is not working, or, you know, Where are you? Do you even exist anymore? I mean, that has to bring on some level of...
It's interesting because I
something.
think I blamed myself more than blamed God. And I think I did because when I got saved, and I'm sure this had a lot to do with my abandonment issues from my father's death, because all I knew was a doting dad when I was, you know, and I talk about that's going to tie really into something greater, but when you have abandonment issues, when you have rejection issues, it's I deny you. But when you have abandonment issues, you buy into the lie that something is fundamentally flawed in you. So therefore, you almost push people out, wanting them to be close, but so afraid of intimacy, so afraid of being hurt. And that demonic cycle, that cycle in my life of abandonment, created a lot of self-doubt, which I think was hard for people to see in Paula White, the preacher,
right.
you know, or
sure.
get me, you know, that's God's girl, you know. Not saying like it all ties together. But it's interesting because what I did ask God was not where are you. What I asked God was, what did I do wrong? Because I had this concept like, well, I must have opened a door.
Yeah.
I must have messed up somewhere.
Which actually is not uncommon in abusive marriages. I mean, a lot of women blame themselves. So at what point did you realize, okay,
well, you know, it's interesting.
You don't deserve this. You know. Right?
It was long after I was even divorced. I mean, to really go through that's why this took me 9 years to write. I had to land some areas. And my prayer was, I just want to die whole. That was my prayer. I want to die whole. It wasn't, you know, because there were all the things, you know, I was given this ultimatum, and it said, if you don't do this, and it's an ultimatum that I would never accept.
Is that in the book?
I write about it very openly in the book, and it's actually on our anniversary. And my ex said, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is I love you. The bad news is I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. And gave me an ultimatum and said if I didn't take that I'd lose everything. Meaning ministry and family and finances and house and everything else. And I remember I went, I might lose everything, but I'm not going to lose me. And I go back to when I say, I asked God, and this was a shift for me, not, God, where are you? I mean, there were times, I can't say like I never went, God, where are you? You know, there are times that you're like, but I didn't feel abandoned by God. I was harder on myself.
Okay.
You know, you can fix this, Paula. What'd you do wrong? Come on, just pray your way through it. Stand. You didn't have enough faith. Give your way. Do something. And I remember Dodie Osteen saying how when she had cancer, she wrote a letter, asked everybody to forgive her. So I'm going, well, is there any unforgiveness in my life? Is there any awe in my heart? And I heard the Holy Spirit whisper to me and said, and I wouldn't understand this till literally a decade or more later, but the Holy Spirit whispered and said, what if you didn't do something wrong? You did something right. Now that's the perception shift that this book takes you to.
Good.
Because when we're in those deep, dark moments and those painful times of our heart being broken, our marriage falling apart, a child dying, your whole life, everything that could be shaken would be shaken. It's hard to feel like I did something right because we try to, I think, take faith like it can fix life.
Yeah.
And faith doesn't just fix life. Faith carries us through life.
There you go.
And that was where I had to understand other people's decisions or even chapters that were painful in my life, hurtful, dark, demonic, confusing. Keep on adding the adjectives that God's sovereignty still stood. And God never changed his mind about me. Though my mind was spinning, though I was in a deep place and dark place and a hurting place and a place that I was trying to make it all fit. And so when it was almost when the Holy Spirit whispered that, I was like, okay. Like, okay. Like, and I didn't know something greater, but something greater doesn't mean, oh, you're going to get to something greater. There's going to be a better marriage, or there's going to be a better house, or a better ministry. No, not at all. Something greater is Ecclesiastes 3, that God has put eternity in our heart. And the Amplified Version says divine sense of purpose. Purpose is your supreme reason for being. It's your why in life. And nothing can take your why in life. Only you can forfeit it. And no one can tell you your why in life. Only you can discover it. And you can only do that through intimate relationship with God. And so I begin to see my entire life through a different lens. Even my childhood. As a young girl, I hate to say, but I became a master manipulator. I could manipulate my mom, a teacher, anyone. You don't know your daddy didn't kill himself. You know, I just wore the mantle of victimhood so well. But I looked after God really did a lot of deliverance and a lot of deep work in my life, and continues. It's a continual life work. And when everything I needed from my Father, I received. And instead of going, well, I remember my son I have a granddaughter that's 3 now, and he was holding her one day, you know, just tears of joy in his life. And he went, Mom, I'm so sorry. And he was crying, and I said, no, don't be. I said, everything I needed, I received. Because when you align your life with the eternity that is in you, which it goes on to say man cannot fathom because only God can reveal it, then you recognize things like, what if my father would have lived? Maybe I would have been the one that killed myself. And people would go, how do you say that? Because maybe maybe there would have been so much dysfunction that the issues that ultimately caused the decision to take his life, I would have been formed as a completely different person.
I have to let you go because you've got a broadcast show to do.
We'll come back and talk more.
I know. I want to hear. I want to hear the rest of it. I know other people are like, no. So the book is available in bookstores. And then what's your website for people that want to just check you out?
It's at paulawhite.org. And then they can get it on all the places of Amazon and Books A Million and
Christian book. We got to mention them.
Book, absolutely. All the different places.
Great. Thank you for your openness, for your vulnerability, for your honesty, because I know this had to be very difficult.
Many tears.
Yeah.
Many tears.
Well, many blessings. Thank you for coming on Life Today.
Thank you so much.